Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back, dear students, after your winter breaks. I hope you all would be very fine. Your chemistry teacher is again here. Today, the topic of our discussion is our new chapter, that is periodic table of elements. So let's move towards our topic. The contents that are to be discussed today, they include Mendeleev periodic table. We will discuss firstly the history of periodic table, and next the current or the modern form of periodic table. Next, some features of periodic table, and at the end some metallic and non-metallic characteristics. So let's proceed toward our today's lecture. History. First of all, हम थोड़ी सी periodic table की history को discuss करेंगे. Periodic table basically defined as a tabular arrangement of elements. Okay, so a scientist named as Mendeleev. His name came when we talk about the history of periodic table. He was a Russian chemist, and he is remembered for organizing the elements into periodic table. यानी ये वो first scientist था जिसने elements को एक table की form में arrange किया. And he was a Russian patriot. He worked very hard for his country. He was one of the first Russian professor to write a textbook for his chemistry students. He received many honors, the greatest of which is having an element named after him, and that element was having atomic number 101, and that element was named as Mendelevium. यानी ये इसकी बहुत बड़ी अचीवमेंट थी periodic table को ऑर्गेनाइज करना, एलिमेंट्स को periodic table की फॉर्म में अरेंज करना, और इसके ऑनर के लिए एक एलिमेंट जो था उसका नेम इसी साइंटिस्ट के नेम की बेस पे राइट किया गया, एंड दैट एलिमेंट वाज मेंडलीवियम हैविंग एटॉमिक नंबर 101. ओके, तो मेंडलीव का जो periodic टेबल था उसकी कुछ लुक इस तरह से थी. ठीक है, आपको ये एक टेबल की शेप नजर आ रही है. इसमें डिफरेंट एलिमेंट्स हैं जिनके सिंबल्स यहाँ पे रिप्रेजेंट किए गए हैं. बहुत सारे एलिमेंट्स से आप फेमिलियर भी होंगे. ओके, इन एलिमेंट्स के बॉटम में इनका एटॉमिक मास जो है वो राइट किया गया है. ठीक है, सो मेंडलीव अरेंज्ड द एलिमेंट्स इन ऑर्डर ऑफ देयर इंक्रीजिंग एटॉमिक masses. ठीक है, यानी वो एलिमेंट पहले राइट किया गया जिसका एटॉमिक मास कम था, उसके बाद वो एलिमेंट अरेंज किया गया जिसका एटॉमिक मास उससे ज्यादा था. सो इन ऑर्डर ऑफ इंक्रीजिंग एटॉमिक masses, these elements that were discovered at that time, and it is roughly 63 elements they were that were arranged at that time, or that were arranged by Mendeleev. यहाँ पे कुछ आपको गैप्स नजर आ रहे हैं, लाइक दिस वन एंड दिस, या कुछ एम्प्टी स्पेसेस कह सकते हैं. दीज एम्प्टी स्पेसेस और दीज गैप्स वर लेफ्ट बाय मेंडलीव. ठीक है, ये उसने कुछ गैप्स जो थे वो यहाँ पे शो किए, और ये उन एलिमेंट्स के लिए थे दैट वर नॉट डिस्कवर्ड एट दैट टाइम, बट ही प्रिडिक्टेड देयर प्रॉपर्टीज. And surprisingly, after a few years later, those elements were discovered and their properties were exactly the same as were given by Mendeleev. So Mendeleev जो है उसकी ये बहुत बड़ी achievement थी, because he was the originator of modern periodic table. Okay, after that, when atomic number was discovered, so this arrangement was further modified into the current form, which we will discuss later on. Okay, so that was a very brief history of periodic table, in which we mainly discuss the contribution of Mendeleev. Okay, so let's properly define periodic table, or which are the important features that are included in periodic table. So periodic table, it can be defined as a list of elements that are arranged in order of their atomic number. Here we are talking about the modern periodic table, in which the elements are arranged in order of their increasing proton number or atomic number. Okay, so periodic table divides the elements into periods and groups. So what are the periods or what are the groups? We will discuss them. Period is basically horizontal row of the elements, okay, and the vertical column of elements is named as group. कुछ horizontal rows हैं, कुछ vertical columns हैं, and they are consecutively known as periods and groups. Okay, so how many periods are in periodic table and how they are arranged? So we will discuss them separately. The periodic table, it consists of 7 periods of elements. They are numbered from 1 to 7. The periods run horizontally from left to right, and each element in a period has a proton number which is one less than the element after it. ओके यानी हर पीरियड में आने वाला पहला एलिमेंट उसके बाद उसका एटॉमिक नंबर कम होगा और उसके बाद कंसेक्टिवली इंक्रीजिंग ऑर्डर में एलिमेंट्स आते हैं इन ईच पीरियड. For example, in period 1, if we talk about the first period, hydrogen is the first element of period 1 and it has atomic number or the proton number 1, while helium, it comes after hydrogen with a proton number of 2. It can be further shown here like this one, period 1, period 2, period 3, 4, 5, 6, and this last one, 7. So the positions of period 1 and period 3 in the periodic table, they are highlighted here. Okay, this is hydrogen, helium. We will later on discuss with complete form of or the modern version of periodic table. So here we only discuss that what are periods and how many periods are present in modern periodic table. So if we talk about the horizontal rows, okay, so there are total 7 periods in periodic table and in which elements are arranged in increasing order of their atomic numbers. Next we move towards the groups. What are groups in the periodic table? So if you talk about the groups, the periodic table has 8 groups of elements that are numbered from 1 to 0. They run vertically from top to the bottom. Group 0 is sometimes called group 8. The vertical columns like this one is group 1, this one is group 2, this one is group 3, group 4, group 5, group 6, group 7, and group 8, or it is also called group 0. Okay, so the positions of group 1 and group 0 in the periodic table is highlighted in this picture. Further, you already know that these groups are basically divided into two subgroups. Total, if you count the vertical columns, then their total number is 18. 8 groups these and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So each group is divided into two subgroups, subgroup A and subgroup B. Okay, these central 10 vertical lines, they are included in subgroup B, and these first two and the last 6, these vertical columns or these groups are named as subgroup A. Okay, so the next is, this one is the simplified version of periodic table. ठीक है, जो आपके सिलेबस में या आपके बुक में मेंशन किया गया है, ये बहुत ही सिंप्लीफाइड वर्जन है. इसमें जस्ट फ्यू एलिमेंट्स जो हैं वो रिप्रेजेंट किए गए हैं और दे आर वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट अकॉर्डिंग टू योर एग्जाम पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू, बिकॉज इसमें बहुत सारे एलिमेंट्स या बहुत सारे ग्रुप्स जो हैं उनको हम फर्दर अपने नेक्स्ट टॉपिक्स में इंडिविजुअली भी डिस्कस करेंगे. Like here represented group 1, group 2, the central 10 groups or these metals, they are collectively called transition elements. These last one, 6 vertical columns, they are numbered as group 3rd, group 4, 5th, 6th, 7th, and the last one group 0 or group 8. So that was a very simplified version of periodic table that is also given in your chemistry books. Now come toward the main or the modern current form of the periodic table that you must know. Here some of the elements are or all the elements are represented with different colors. Okay, if we talk about the non-metals that are represented with white color, so hydrogen, the top member of group 1. And these elements, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, sulfur, and selenium, they are purely non-metals. If we talk about this first column, that is alkali metals, okay. The second group, that is called alkaline metals. If we talk about the central portion of the periodic table, that is represented with a purple shade, these are transition metals, okay. The last one, or the right side of the periodic table, which is represented with the black color boxes, these are noble gases, okay. Those which are represented with the yellow color, they are called metalloids. Those which are represented with a red shade, or this, if we talk about this group, fluorine, chlorine, bromine, iodine, these are called halogens. And the remaining ones, these aluminium, gallium, these are some other metals, okay. And at the end, you can see here the two horizontal rows, which are named as lanthanides and actinides. So this is the complete description of the modern periodic table. And you must know, and we will discuss some of the groups individually that are the part of your syllabus. Like, we will discuss alkali metals, alkaline earth metals. We will discuss in detail about noble gases, about halogens, and about transition metals. Okay. One important thing is here, there is a bold line or staircase line is represented with this black color. Okay. This line is basically separate. This line separates the non-metals from metals. Okay. Above this staircase line, all the elements, these are non-metals, and below this staircase line, all the elements are metals. Or these elements that are present on this staircase line, they having some properties resemble half with the non-metals and half with the metals, so they are termed as metalloids. Okay, so that was the brief description of modern periodic table. You can clearly see here that there are 7 periods, horizontal rows, and total 18 vertical columns from subgroup A and subgroup B. Okay, so have a look here. The central portion of the periodic table, which is called transition metals, the block of metals between group second A and group third A, that is highlighted with this light green color, and that are known as transition metals. Transition metals are located in the middle of the periodic table, in between the elements of left and the right. So they act as a bridge or transition between the two sides of the periodic table. So they are named as transition metals. Okay, or they are also called transition metals, or they include the subgroup B. Okay, some periodic trends we will discuss, that we already have discussed in our previous periodic version of the modern version of periodic table. Here, if you have a look over here, that this staircase line, or the line which divides the metals and the non-metals, the portion or the left hand side, sorry, yes, the left hand side of the periodic table, which is represented with the yellow shade, they all are metals. And the right hand side, which is represented with this light blue shade, they are all non-metals. Okay, and this central line, or the bold line, it or it is also named as staircase line, it divides the metals and non-metals. So periodic table divides the elements into metals and non-metals. The bold line in the above figure, it divides the metals from non-metals. Okay, several elements, for example silicon, germanium, that are located very close to the bold line. Because of their positions, these elements have the properties of both metal and non-metal. So silicon and germanium are known as metalloids. And their definition is already discussed before. Okay, because these elements having some similar properties to both metals and non-metals, so they are called metalloids, like silicon, germanium, arsenic. Okay, next we will discuss some metallic and non-metallic characteristics. Metals are grouped on the left hand side of the periodic table. Okay, अगर हम किसी भी एक period की बात करें, तो in each period the left hand side of the elements they are named as metals, and the right hand sided elements they are named as non-metals. Due to the change from metal to non-metal across a period, there is a also a change in the properties of elements. If we move from metal to non-metal, or if we move across a period from left to right, then their properties also changes. Here we have discussed the period 3, and as you know that in each period the elements of different groups are present. Like if we talk about the period 3, it starts from sodium. The next element next to sodium is magnesium, then aluminium, then silicon, then phosphorus, then sulfur, then chlorine, and this period ends at argon. Okay, and the names already been discussed here. So if we talk about their properties, so sodium, magnesium, and aluminium, okay, that lies on the left side of the period, they are purely metals. Okay, if we talk about silicon, then its properties resemble to both metal and non-metal, so it is referred as a metalloid. But if we talk about phosphorus, sulfur, chlorine, and argon, so these are represented, or these are known as non-metals. Okay, if we talk about the nature of their oxides, then their oxides, basically this point will be discussed in our next chapters, when you will study about the basic or basicity or acidity. But here we just have a look over it, that there, if we talk about their oxides, then the metal oxides they are of basic nature, and the non-metal oxides they are of acidic nature. But overall we have only discussed here the metallic and the non-metallic properties. Okay, किसी भी एक पीरियड में लेफ्ट साइड पे metallic properties होंगी और metals होंगी, or when we move from left to right, then on the right side of the periodic table in each period the properties change from metal toward the non-metallic. So from left to right across a period, there is a decrease in metallic properties and increase in the non-metallic properties. Okay. At the end, we will discuss an important thing, that what do the group and the period numbers tell us about the electronic structure of elements. हमें किसी भी ग्रुप या पीरियड नंबर से हमें कौन कौन सी इंफॉर्मेशन जो है वो मिलती है. Okay, so here to understand this we have discussed some groups, some elements of the group 2, group 4, and group 6 with their electronic configuration, like the element beryllium, magnesium, and calcium. They are present in the same group too. Okay. Next, carbon and silicon, they belong to the same group 4th. Next, oxygen and sulfur, they belong to the same group 6. Their electronic configuration is represented here. Beryllium having 4 atomic number. First shell carries 2 electrons. Next shell carry 2 electrons. Next, magnesium, it shows atomic number 12. So the electronic configuration can be represented here. Okay, इलेक्ट्रॉनिक कॉन्फ़िगरेशन आई थिंक कि आप लोग बहुत अच्छे तरीके से राइट करना आती है. ठीक है, सो इस टेबल में हमने कुछ एलिमेंट्स हैं, उनके इलेक्ट्रॉनिक कॉन्फ़िगरेशन, उनका ग्रुप नंबर एज वेल एज उनका जो पीरियड नंबर है वो रिप्रेजेंट किया है. सेकंड पीरियड से, थर्ड पीरियड से, ये फोर्थ पीरियड से, अगेन कार्बन सेकंड पीरियड से, सिलिकॉन थर्ड पीरियड से, ऑक्सीजन सेकंड पीरियड से, और सल्फर थर्ड पीरियड में. ठीक है, तो क्वेश्चन वाज कि व्हाट डू द ग्रुप एंड द पीरियड नंबर टेल अस अबाउट द इलेक्ट्रॉनिक कॉन्फ़िगरेशन ऑफ एलिमेंट्स. तो उसके लिए अगर आप देखें group number, this table shows that group 2 elements having 2 valence electrons. Okay, अगर आप group 2 के elements को देखें तो इन सब के पास वैलेंस शेल में if I further highlight it, then you can clearly see this. If we talk about the if we talk about the group 2 elements, they having 2 valence electrons. Similarly, group 4 elements having 4 valence electrons. Group 4 elements here, 2 of the elements of group 4 are represented here, carbon and silicon, and the both having 4 valence electrons. Similarly, group 6 elements, they have 6 valence electrons. If we talk about group 6 here, the valence electrons are 6. Okay, so it can be represented here, the number of valence electrons is equal to the group number. यानी किसी भी एलिमेंट का जो ग्रुप नंबर है वो उस एलिमेंट के नंबर ऑफ वैलेंस इलेक्ट्रॉन्स को रिप्रेजेंट करेगा. लाइक ग्रुप 2 के एलिमेंट्स में वैलेंस इलेक्ट्रॉन्स 2 होंगे. अगर ग्रुप नंबर 4 है इट मींस कि उस एलिमेंट के वैलेंस इलेक्ट्रॉन्स 4 होंगे, और अगर ग्रुप नंबर 6 है तो वैलेंस इलेक्ट्रॉन्स जो हैं उनका नंबर भी क्या होगा, 6 होगा. ओके, तो नेक्स्ट जो है वो हम इसके बाद देखते हैं कि सिमिलरली जो यहाँ पे जो इसका जो पीरियड नंबर है, ठीक है, पीरियड नंबर वो क्या शो करता है, पीरियड नंबर शोज द नंबर ऑफ इलेक्ट्रॉन शेल्स इन एन एटम. ठीक है, पीरियड नंबर क्या शो कर रहा है, नंबर ऑफ टोटल इलेक्ट्रॉनिक शेल्स. तो इफ वी टॉक अबाउट बेरिलियम, कार्बन एंड ऑक्सीजन और दोज एलिमेंट्स दैट बिलोंग टू द सेम पीरियड, लाइक अगर हम यहाँ पे बात करें बेरिलियम की, ठीक है, उसी तरीके से कार्बन की, और उस तरीके से हम ऑक्सीजन की बात करें, ठीक है. सो दीज आर द एलिमेंट्स highlighted here. They belong to the same period, that is period 2. Beryllium, carbon and oxygen, they each have 2 electron shells. अगर आप देखें तो इनके पास टोटल यहाँ पे फर्दर अगर मैं यहाँ पे रिप्रेजेंट करूँ कि इनके पास टोटल जो शेल्स हैं वो कितने हैं, 2. कार्बन also having 2 shells, oxygen also having 2 shells, and beryllium also having 2 shells. Okay, so this information which is shown here, that the period number shows the number of electron shells in an atom. So that was a very very important information, that the period number represents or shows the number of total electronic shells in an atom, and the group number, it shows the number of valence electrons in any group. Okay, so that was about today's lecture, and a very brief description about the periodic table. I hope you all understand it very well. Thank you very much. Goodbye.